Jacinta, thank you. Welcome back to the program. Welcome to our panel this afternoon. Joining us from Brisbane, election and political strategist Bruce Hawker, who's working on the Queensland Labor campaign in Brisbane and also, as we know, helped Kevin Rudd in his attempt to return to the leadership. Here with me in Canberra, Grahame Morris, a political strategist and consultant who was John Howard's Chief of Staff as well. Thank you both for joining us. I want to start on the Queensland campaign. Grahame Morris, you heard Anna Bligh there. It is a very negative approach and focused approach on Campbell Newman. The whole Labor campaign is really centred on Campbell Newman. As they say, though, negative campaigning might irk a lot of us, but it works. What do you think?
Yeah, but what is it about all these Blinken Blighs that can't run a half-decent ship? And then, you know, when they want to repel borders, they get sneaky, mean, tricky, ruthless. You know, this has opened up a new can of worms, this one, and that is you attack the dealings of your opponent's family. You know, what is this? You know, has Premier Bligh's husband, who's a public servant, has he had a pay rise while the minister has been in office? What about Prime Minister Gillard's partner? Should one have a look at his business dealings? Should we have a look at Kevin Rudd's wife, Therese Rain's business dealing? This is a new form of campaigning.
Well, I think the target isn't so much Campbell Newman's wife, but the decisions Campbell Newman made as Lord Mayor.
No, all the ads talk about Campbell Newman's family and brothers-in-law and all that sort of stuff. This is really grubby, and it shows you that the Labor Party, well, they can't run on leadership, there is none. They can't run on the record, it is dreadful. So they're attacking their opponent and hope that works. And well, Bruce, that's fine, but it opens a new style of campaigning which a lot of people won't like.
And Bruce, it did seem pretty clear that there is no evidence that he's broken any law. Otherwise, presumably the Premier would have answered that. Is the point here just to keep running the question, as we heard the Premier put it, keep running these questions to build that seed of doubt in people's minds about Campbell Newman?
Well, Campbell Newman has got a lot of answers to give, David. That's the bottom line here. He was Lord Mayor of Brisbane for 7 years. And in that time, there have been some approvals to developments given, and there have been members of his family, his wife's family, who have benefited from those, and there have been no declarations. You know, a classic one was this one at Wollongabba, where a fellow had some land he wanted to develop and have it up-zoned, as they say here. It was up-zoned, and Campbell Newman, even though this fellow had a corporate interest with both Newman's wife and her brother, did absolutely nothing to declare that interest. This is the sort of thing that's been happening on numerous occasions, unfortunately, and I think it's fair game for the government to be saying, well, this is the fellow who could be Lord Mayor in a very few weeks' time, and you should have a good hard look at him, because in his period as Lord Mayor, these are the sorts of things that happened, and soon he could well be Premier.
Now, Bruce, Bruce, everyone knows that the only crooks in politics are those who used to be in the Queensland government with Anna Bligh, some of whom are now in trouble in various jails and various courts around the country, and the New South Wales government. That's
a long stretch even by your standards, mate. That's a long stretch even by your standards. Listen, this is a very appropriate thing to be doing, because this man was Lord Mayor of Brisbane for several years, for 7 years. This isn't just the only project that we're talking about here. There was an application for some $30 million in flood-related funding for a project just days after the floods in Brisbane, once again made by his family.
And what was improper? What was improper?
What he was doing there was basically what they were trying to do was clean up while Brisbane was cleaning up. And they weren't cleaning up Brisbane. Brisbane was being cleaned up by other people. They weren't cleaning up Brisbane. They wanted to clean up. And these are the sorts of things that people can look at and make their judgments about.
Yeah, well,
so far, in the seat of
Ashgrove, one thing to say that, Bruce, and another to say there's actually hard evidence that he's broken a law and will be in jail one day, as the Premier put it. I want to just look at the issue of gay marriage, though, which Bob Catt has targeted from the other end of the spectrum. Grahame, there's no argument here, is there, that this is an issue on which Campbell Newman's wedged. He did say as Lord Mayor, I support gay marriage. Now he's got to try and argue that he doesn't. Or that the party doesn't.
He's now looked at it and realised it's none of his business, none of the state government's business, none of a Lord Mayor's business, nobody's business, it's a federal government business. But I tell you what, you know, when people give money to political parties, they must obviously think about where that money is going. And one wonders, you know, last week, James Packer. Mr. Packer gave the Qatar organisation $250,000. And you think, all of a sudden, there's this big advertising campaign about gay community. You know, is that really what Mr. Packer wanted his money to be used on? And you think, what would James think about this?
Well,
I suspect he'd be mortified.
He's got a lot of free publicity out of it, probably more than 250 grand's worth today, Bruce, I would guess.
Yeah, I suspect so. Look, I think the problem, though, that ad was very offensive, I might say, and I don't think any fair-minded person would be defending it. But Campbell Newman has got himself into a pickle over this issue because he won't come out and say what his attitude towards gay marriages really is. In that ad, he says he supports it. In other public pronouncements, he's very evasive about it. So if he were to come out and make a very clear and unequivocal statement about it, he wouldn't be in the sort of strife he is over the issue right now. But he's trying to be all things to all people on the issue, and I think that's the most important thing to bear in mind here. He won't give a straight answer.
Well, the problem that he had giving a straight answer on today was how will you get rid of civil unions, which are already law in Queensland. He said, you know, we'll get rid of them, but what happens to people who've already had them? This appears to be too difficult to explain.
No, you can't unravel them, but you know, from the time legislation would pass into Parliament, then you couldn't do it.
Now,
but really, we all know it's Canberra's job, not Queensland's job.
I want to move on to...
That's the issue of gay marriage, not civil unions, and that's the difference
that's right.
here.
Let's move on then to federal issues. Stephen Smith's relationship with Defence. We've seen a lot of focus on this after the various inquiries were released last week over the ad for Skype issue, and then a damning account from former retired Major General John Cantwell over the weekend that Stephen Smith does not respect the men and women in uniform. Bruce Hawker, do you think there's a problem here with Stephen Smith's relationship with the military, and does it matter that a minister apparently doesn't have a great relationship with the Defence Force?
Well, I think there are probably some people in the Defence Force who don't agree with him, but I don't think he's Robinson Crusoe there. I think what we're seeing here probably are the sort of standards that we see in civil society being enforced by the minister, and I think some resistance within the military to some of the things that he said, particularly with respect to Cadet Officer Kate, somebody who had been treated absolutely abominably. No one would argue with that, and then was the subject of further disciplinary charges for unrelated matters right at the time when this matter was being investigated by the military.
Yeah.
So I think that was the point that he was making.
Which the inquiry found he'd shown no error of judgment in that part. But what I'm getting to here is what seems on the face of it to be a problem in the relationship. How worried would you be about that?
Not overly. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that he's got a difference of opinion with certain people in the military on this particular issue, and I suspect that he's probably got some thoughts about the way ADFA and other institutions have operated in the military for many, many years and wants to see them modernised. But I don't think that represents a fundamental breach of his relationship with the military, and I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that.
Well, I quite like Stephen Smith, but he's had a dreadful 10 days. You know, his relationship with Defence is shot. His relationship, obviously, with this Prime Minister is shot. She sort of didn't give him the job that he was entitled to have. He actually went out and shot Kevin Rudd. Maybe he's just a good shot. Maybe that's why he's Defence Minister. Look, no. I actually thought Stephen Smith's first reaction to this, where it looked as if the young girl in the middle of this pickle had been hardly done by, and Defence had a sort of have an inquiry into something that looked as if she was being victimised. I thought that was poor form, and I don't care what an inquiry does. The optics of that was dreadful. However, some very, very, very good people that I respect and whose judgment I respect say that hanging Kafer out to dry, the fellow who was in charge of everything in Defence at that time, was a very poor move. He's a well-respected officer, a very, very competent man, and I think that's where Minister Smith ran into trouble, as he sort of hung the bloke too early.
And I also want to touch on the mining tax, which is going to be the big policy argument over the next couple of weeks in Parliament. The government still has to get this through the Senate. The Greens, you would expect, will eventually back this, but they are demanding to see the company tax cuts legislated as well, which is part of the compensation or part of the dividend from this mining tax as well. Bruce, important for the government to get this through before the budget. It's due to come into force, the mining tax, from the middle of the year. Do you think it should also be legislating things that the Greens want, like that company tax cut, for example?
Well, if that's what's required, then that's what they should do. I mean, the government's committed to cutting the company tax from 30 to 29%. And this is part and parcel of the superannuation pledge that they made at the last election campaign, something which Tony Abbott is not committing to do. I think he's actually going to increase company taxes. So if this is what's required, then if that's what the Green political party requires of the government to get this thing sorted out, I think they probably should. Having said that, I think if they just stood on their digs and said we'll get to that when we get to it, I don't think the Greens would stop it happening. I think they would face a big backlash within their own constituency if they were to do it. I mean, these are the people that stopped the ETS last time around. We wouldn't have any of the problem we've got with the carbon tax if they'd done the right thing back then. So I think they would probably wear a lot of criticism if they tried to get in the way of this one. This is good politics and good public policy.
The company tax will apply earliest to small business, and Grahame, small business are out there today saying, come on, let's get this thing done. We support this. Small Business Traditional Coalition constituency, they're backing this whole mining tax. Does that make life harder, do you think, to oppose it?
I put them both together, the mining tax and the carbon tax, and anything Bob Brown and his Greens can do to get rid of these stupid things, the better. I suspect, though, that Bob will roll over and have his tummy tickled and will love it.
All right, on that point, we shall see. Grahame Morris and Bruce Hawker, thanks for joining us this afternoon. After the break, we'll be talking to National Senate Leader Barnaby Joyce. Stay with us.